The disabled veteran in a wheelchair rolled into a small-town courtroom to explain a missed hearing. He mentioned his Veterans Affairs appointment. The judge glanced at the bronze star on his jacket and mocked him. "You think that tin decoration gives you special privileges? This isn't a parade ground. It's my courtroom." The veteran gripped his wheelchair, silent, humiliated. But in the back row, an old Vietnam vet had already pulled out his phone. "One text, one call." 20 minutes later, the courtroom doors opened. A major general in full-dress uniform walked in. What she revealed about that tin decoration would shatter the judge's arrogance and bring every person in that room to tears. What happened next no one saw coming. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? The courtroom fell silent, except for the soft creak of wheelchair wheels against old linoleum. Michael Torres sat before the bench mid-50s, shoulders still square despite everything taken from him. Judge Raymond Hartwell didn't bother looking up from his papers as Michael began explaining how his Veterans Affairs medical appointment had conflicted with his court date. The judge's hand rose, cutting him off mid-sentence. His eyes finally lifted, landing on the bronze star pinned to Michael's faded jacket. A sneer twisted across his face. "Let me guess. You think that tin decoration gives you special privileges? This isn't a parade ground, soldier. It's my courtroom." The words hit like shrapnel. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Michael's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. His eyes dropped to his motionless legs. His weathered hands gripped the wheelchair armrests until his knuckles turned bone white, trembling with the effort of holding back decades of pain. The injustice hung thick in the air. What happened next changed everything. But Michael Torres wasn't always in that courtroom, gripping his wheelchair in silent rage. Just 12 hours earlier, Dawn had found him in his modest duplex, performing the morning ritual he'd mastered over 14 years. The transfer from bed to wheelchair took 11 careful movements, each one a small victory nobody witnessed. No complaints escaped his lips, even when the nerve pain shot through phantom limbs that Afghanistan had claimed. His walls held photos of his unit from 2009, but no medals on display, no glory shrine, just faces of brothers. The centerpiece hung beside his bed. 3rd Platoon, Bravo Company, everyone still standing. 5 faces bore circles in black marker with dates written beneath. KIA, killed in action. He kissed his fingertips, pressed them to the glass. "Morning, brothers." The local youth center knew him simply as Mike, the quiet man who taught woodworking every Tuesday and Thursday. He navigated his wheelchair through the workshop with surgical precision, guiding teenage hands through measurements and cuts. These kids, most from broken homes, never heard war stories from him. When Jamal, 16 and angry at the world, noticed the bronze star on Michael's jacket last week, he'd asked what it meant. Michael's response came soft, deflecting. "Just did my job. Same as everyone else." The boy had pressed, but Michael simply returned to sanding, showing him how to find the grain. That Veterans Affairs appointment, the one Judge Hartwell had just dismissed, was for physical therapy and counseling Michael never discussed. The medications for pain and PTSD sometimes left him foggy. He'd written the court date wrong, transposed numbers in that careful handwriting that trembled some mornings. A simple, honest mistake from a man who'd spent 15 years asking for nothing, serving others from a wheelchair, paying every bill on time. This was who sat before that judge. This was who'd just been humiliated. Back in that courtroom, Judge Raymond Hartwell sat in his element. 15 years on the bench had transformed him from servant of justice to emperor of his domain. He'd already dismissed 3 defendants that morning with theatrical sighs and cutting remarks. His bailiff and clerk had long stopped making eye contact when he performed these displays. They knew better. Michael rolled his wheelchair forward slightly, extending documentation from the Veterans Affairs Hospital with a steady hand. "Your Honor, if you'll look at the appointment confirmation." The judge's voice cracked like a whip. "I've heard every excuse under the sun. You know how many people claim medical appointments to dodge responsibility. He barely glanced at the papers, pushing them aside. Convenient paperwork. You military types think the world owes you something. Sarah Chen, the public defender barely 2 years out of law school, found her courage and stood. Your Honor, Mr. Torres has a spotless record and documented proof. The gavel slammed so hard the sound echoed. Counselor, unless you want to join him in contempt. Sit down. Her face flushed crimson, but she sank back, hands trembling with suppressed rage. Judge Hartwell leaned forward, his voice dripping with disdain. I'm tired of seeing grown men hide behind uniforms and medals when they can't handle basic civic duties. That little star on your jacket doesn't impress me. It doesn't grant you immunity from the law. He paused, his gaze traveling deliberately down to Michael's wheelchair, lingering there with undisguised contempt. Frankly, I've seen enough disabled veterans gaming the system to know better. Rolling in here expecting sympathy. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Michael's face remained carved from stone, but his hands gripped the wheelchair armrests so tightly the metal seemed to bend. The veins in his forearms stood out like rope. In the gallery, Marcus, 68 Vietnam Purple Heart, started rising from his seat. His wife grabbed his arm, whispering urgently, "Don't, please, it'll make it worse." The old soldier sat back down, his jaw working silently. Judge Hartwell straightened his robe, savoring his authority. Guilty? $1,500 fine, due in 30 days. Fail to pay and we'll add it to your record. Maybe that'll teach you responsibility, Mr. Torres. The heavy oak doors suddenly groaned open. Every head turned. The judge's mouth opened to bark at the interruption, but the words died in his throat. Major General Rebecca Stone entered like a force of nature held in perfect discipline. 58 years old, full dress uniform. Her chest bore ribbons that told stories of Iraq, Afghanistan, and classified operations most would never know. 2 junior officers flanked her, matching her stride. The courtroom's atmosphere shifted instantly. The kind of presence that made civilians unconsciously straighten their spines. She moved with the economy of someone who'd commanded thousands under fire, her eyes scanning until they found Michael in his wheelchair. Judge Hartwell's composure cracked for just a moment before he tried to reclaim his kingdom. This is a closed session. Unless you have court business, I have business with that veteran you just sentenced. Your Honor, General Stone didn't break stride, her voice carrying the kind of authority earned in places where gavels meant nothing. Respectful but immovable. The judge's face reddened. As I just explained to Mr. Torres here, military service doesn't exempt anyone from— The general raised one hand, not dramatically. Just a simple gesture that somehow commanded more power than his gavel ever could. I'm not here to debate jurisdiction, Judge Hartwell. I'm here because I received a phone call 20 minutes ago from the gallery, a witness to what just happened. She glanced toward Marcus in the back row, the old Vietnam veteran who'd nearly risen in protest moments earlier. He'd slipped his phone back into his pocket after firing off that emergency text to the Veterans Network, a chain that had reached General Stone's aid within minutes. Marcus gave a single sharp nod. His wife's grip on his arm loosened, understanding dawning on her face. When a decorated combat veteran tells me that one of our own, a Bronze Star recipient, is being publicly humiliated in a courtroom, I don't ignore it. The general's words cut through the silence like a blade. The gallery erupted in whispers. Sarah Chen, the young defender, leaned forward, vindication blazing in her eyes. Michael looked up from his wheelchair, confusion clouding his face until recognition struck. His eyes widened just slightly. He knew that face, Afghanistan. She'd been there. General Stone met his gaze and gave the smallest nod. The wordless acknowledgement between warriors who'd shared the same sand and blood. She turned back to the judge, who now gripped his bench with both hands, visibly shaken but still clinging to fragments of defiance. That tin decoration you dismissed? Would you like to know what it represents? I'm aware of military commendations, General. I'm also aware this is a civilian court and then you'll want to hear this. She pulled out a tablet but didn't consult it yet. Instead, she addressed the entire courtroom, her voice steady and clear. I apologize for the interruption, but some stories need to be told when disrespect is this public. Her gaze returned to Michael, still seated in his wheelchair, hands trembling slightly on the armrests. Sergeant Torres, with your permission? Michael's throat worked. No words came. He simply nodded, overwhelmed. August 17, 2009, Helmand Province, Afghanistan. Sergeant Torres was leading a patrol securing a village school when his unit was ambushed. Outnumbered 3-1, trapped in a kill zone. He could have ordered a retreat, should have, tactically. But there were 47 children and 2 teachers locked in that school, directly in the line of fire. She pauses, letting it sink in. The gallery is transfixed. The judge's face begins to pale. Sergeant Torres made a choice. He drew enemy fire deliberately, exposing his position to pull their attention, while his men evacuated those children. He held that position for 11 minutes. Her voice cracked slightly. 11 minutes against machine gun fire and RPGs, taking rounds that shattered his spine and severed nerves in both legs. Michael stares down at his wheelchair, jaw clenched, reliving it. His hands rest motionless now on the armrests. He didn't retreat until every child was safe. He lost 2 men covering that evacuation, Lance Corporal James Rivera and Private First Class David Chen. He still visits their families every year on the anniversary. In a wheelchair, making a journey most able-bodied people wouldn't bother with. The general's voice strengthens. That Bronze Star you mocked? It came with a recommendation for the Silver Star, downgraded only because Sergeant Torres refused to accept higher recognition, while his men received less. He insisted they deserved equal honor, even as he lay in a field hospital being told he'd never walk again. She turns to the judge, who's now sitting rigidly, face ashen. That tin decoration represents a man who sacrificed his legs, his independence, and carries survivor's guilt that requires ongoing therapy, which is why he missed your court date, Your Honor. Because he was at the VA working through PTSD and physical rehabilitation, trying to heal wounds you couldn't begin to understand. The courtroom is dead silent, except for muffled crying from several gallery members. The veteran Marcus is standing now, hand over heart. Others follow. General Stone continues, softer now. Sergeant Torres never speaks about that day. He lives quietly, asks for nothing, serves his community from that wheelchair. He didn't come here seeking special treatment. He came to take responsibility for an honest mistake. And you humiliated a genuine American hero for it. She steps aside as 2 uniformed soldiers enter, carrying a display case. Inside, the full documentation of Michael's service, including photos of the rescue operation and letters from the Afghan families whose children he saved. The courtroom remained standing in silence so profound you could hear breathing. The bailiff wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, no longer pretending composure. The clerk's mascara had run in dark streaks. Sarah Chen stood with her fist pressed against her mouth, shoulders shaking. Judge Hartwell sat frozen on his bench, a man watching his own soul in the mirror for the first time in years. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound emerged. General Stone turned to him, her voice softer now but no less powerful. I'm not here to destroy your career, Judge Hartwell. I'm here to remind you that you never truly know who sits before you. Respect isn't about rank or medals. It's about recognizing human dignity. Whether someone stands tall or sits in a wheelchair. The judge finally found his voice, though it came out broken, barely above a whisper. Sergeant Torres, He stood, hands trembling as they gripped the bench for support. There is no excuse for what I said. None. I was arrogant, dismissive, and cruel. His voice cracked. You deserved better. This court deserved better. Slowly, with shaking hands, he removed his black robe, the symbol of his authority, his armor, and laid it across the bench. I will be submitting my conduct to judicial review, and I owe you an apology that words cannot adequately convey. Every eye in the courtroom turned to Michael. The moment stretched tight as wire. Would he accept, reject, demand the justice he'd been denied? Michael's hands shifted on the armrests. The wheelchair rolled forward, just a few feet, movement slow and deliberate. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it filled every corner of that room. Your Honor, I've seen good men make mistakes under pressure. I've made plenty myself. He paused, his gaze steady. The difference is what we do after. I accept your apology. We're all fighting battles others can't see. Maybe we both learned something today about looking closer. Judge Hartwell's face crumpled. Tears spilled freely as he stepped down from the bench, walked around it, and knelt beside Michael's wheelchair, meeting him at eye level, hand extended. Michael took it. General Stone stepped forward and delivered a sharp salute. The two junior officers followed in perfect unison. Then Marcus rose in the gallery, his weathered hand snapping to his forehead. Others joined, veterans and civilians alike, hands over hearts. The courtroom became a cathedral of respect. Michael raised his hand from his wheelchair and returned the salute, his own tears finally falling, not from humiliation, but from overwhelming recognition of the brothers who never came home. Outside the courthouse, autumn sunlight broke through the clouds. General Stone walked beside Michael's wheelchair down the ramp, her pace matching his. She stopped, placing a hand on his shoulder. Private First Class David Chen, she said quietly. He was my nephew, my sister's only son. Michael's hands froze on the wheels. That's why I came today. That's why I'll always come. They embraced, two warriors bound by grief and honor, no words necessary. Michael wheeled toward his accessible van, but he didn't go home. 20 minutes later, his wheelchair rested on familiar ground. Riverside Cemetery, Section 12. He positioned himself before two headstones, Rivera and Chen. Fresh flowers laid carefully at each base. His hand rose in salute, steady now, voice barely a whisper. Still standing, brothers. Still here. Respect costs nothing, but its absence costs everything. We pass countless heroes every day. In grocery stores, at bus stops, in courtrooms. People in wheelchairs and with invisible wounds, carrying untold stories we'll never know unless we look closer. Judge Hartwell learned that dignity isn't granted by authority. It's recognized through humility. Michael Torres reminded us that true strength isn't about standing tall. It's about never surrendering your honor, no matter what you've lost. Thousands of veterans face invisible battles every day. They ask for nothing but deserve everything. If this story moved you, honor a veteran today with respect, with gratitude, or simply by listening to their story. Subscribe to hear more stories of quiet heroes who change the world.